Hey, hello everyone out there. Thank you for attending our webinar today. We're going to be talking about why businesses need to use Facebook ads. Before we get into the actual webinar, what we'd like to do is introduce our guests. We have some very exciting guests today. We're going to start with our first guest here, and forgive me if I murder your last name here, Matthew, but I believe it's Matthew Stradiato. Is that correct?
Nice, very well done. Stradioto.
Okay.
Yes.
Just so you guys know, Matthew's a co-founder of Matchstick, and Matchstick is an independent social media marketing agency that has launched campaigns for like Adidas, Microsoft, GE, Coca-Cola, L'Oreal, Starbucks, Molson, Chrysler, and there's probably more global brands than that Matthew's worked with. In fact, he says he has, I don't believe him, he says he has 18 years experience, but I think he's too young to have that much year experience. So we'd like to welcome Matthew to the panel today.
Thank you.
And we'd also like to welcome Michael Brito. And Michael's the head of social strategy at WCG. Michael is a social strategist, he's an author, he's a professor, and he is an avid 49er and Lakers fan. With over 15 years experience, again, he looks a little too young for 15 years experience, helping organizations solving marketing challenges.
Thank you, sir.
And then we've got Lasse, and Lasse, I know you gave me the pronunciation for your last name, but I'm going to give this a shot, but correct me if I'm wrong, okay? I believe it's Lasse Rohianen?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, all right. And he's an international speaker and leading authority on social media, as well as video marketing. He's an international leading authority on video, and he's also authored a couple books. One of them is the 101 Video Marketing Tips and Strategies for Small Businesses. It's a great book, as well as Smart Social Media Marketing. And then our last guest here is Rocco Baldessari, all the way from Italy. He's the founder of Zebra Advertisement. He is a digital marketing consultant. He's a speaker and an entrepreneur. He's founded companies like $1 Ad, InternationalPPC.com, and of course the award-winning agency Zebra Advertisement. And he's best known for being one of Google Partners' all-star winners. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for attending and speaking on the webinar today.
Thank you.
Before we get into the actual webinar, we'd like to also introduce some of the people behind the scenes. These are people that you guys don't really get to hear from, but to be honest, without their help, this just wouldn't be happening. And of course, I'm your moderator today. My name is Matthew Hunt. I'm the Chief Operations Officer at Powered by Search. And behind the scenes here, we have Joel and Gorn and Dwayne. If we could give a big virtual round of applause for those guys, that'd be great. Just to let people know about the webinar recording, if for some reason you have a meeting and you have to jump out, or if you weren't able to, watch the whole thing, it will be available. We're recording it on May 5th. It'll be on our blog. You'll be able to go to the blog, or you'll be able to go to Powered by Search /2015 webinar series to find it. As well as if you signed up, we'll be sure to email you a link to the recording. For all those that are out there, feel free today to be able to ask lots of questions via the chat function within the webinar. And if you're on Twitter, feel free to ask questions, or if you liked something that somebody said and you want to quote them, be sure to use the hashtag #MarketingFanatics. We're using that hashtag because we're all nuts, and that's more marketing. A little bit about the agenda today. So what we're going to be talking about, or what we're going to debate today, I guess, or talk about, is we're going to do a little bit of an introduction to Facebook advertising. Facebook advertising best practices. We're going to talk about Facebook custom audiences, Facebook pixels, optimizing Facebook ads. We're going to have a chance for you guys to ask the experts, our Facebook experts. Well, if we have time, we're going to get to ad rejection and some of the top tools that people are using. And at the end, we want you guys to stay all the way to the end, because if you stay to the end, we're going to allow you to participate in a survey where we can get some feedback from you guys. There's no right or wrong answers. Just did you like the webinar or didn't you like it? And if you do fill out that survey, you'll be able to be entered into a contest to be able to win an Amazon gift card. I believe it's for $50, or I believe is what it's for. So without further ado, let's get into the meat of what this webinar is about. Let's talk about introducing Facebook advertising. I think I'm just going to, gents, I'm just going to go through the panels. I'm going to start with Matthew, I think, just because I think we introduced him first. Can you maybe just give us a quick overview about, what are the different options that are available with Facebook advertising?
Sure, thanks, Matthew. It's really exciting to have this conversation go forward. We think Facebook's an amazing platform, and the question you ask is in some ways hard to answer. There are many, many types of ad units that Facebook offers. In fact, in terms of developing ad unit types, we think they're best in class. We often see other platforms like Twitter, LinkedIn even picking up on these same style of units. So you can do everything, of course, from text-based to photo-based to video-based to link-based advertising, and we think a really important thing to consider is your objectives for the ad unit, what you're trying to achieve, and that usually ties back to the format of the unit that you'll choose. We're particularly excited about the video ad unit that Facebook has developed, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation about that in this chat. And how it pertains to mobile and is playing out on mobile devices around the world. So we'll maybe come back to that.
Okay, yeah, and I think you use the word objective, and I think even when Facebook, when you start out an ad campaign on Facebook, I think that's actually the question they ask you: what is your objective, right? Of the type of advertising you want to do. So that's really good point, and there is all kinds of great formats that you can do. I thought maybe we just go to and ask Michael next. A little bit about this. Why should a business be excited about running ads on Facebook?
That's a really great question. I think that the easiest way to answer that is that it's easy. It's very easy to turn on any type of paid media, and Facebook makes it even that much easier, assuming you have good content and you have somewhat of an audience. But also, I mean, if you think about the customer experience, right, and if you think about how consumers, regardless of what vertical or where you work, geography, healthcare, small business, enterprise, if you think about the customer experience, it's very dynamic and unpredictable. And so, we spend a lot of time in Facebook. I'm in Facebook all day. I have a tab open. I'm scrolling through my feed, 3 or 4 times a day. And if you think about, that is an additional touch point, and it's the biggest touch point if you think about just size of the network itself. And so for small business specifically, and when you think about kind of local communities and customers who are kind of in a certain geography, it's a great opportunity to be very laser focused on the messages and the content that you're trying to share, and then being able to target certain geographies or lifestyle interests or zip codes, whatever it is. So I think it's just, to scale, it's easy. It's not very expensive. I mean, I have a sister who I just helped her with her page on she opened a salon, and she cuts hair in Tucson, and we spend $200 a month on targeted content, and her business is blowing up. And we're targeting people in Tucson, Arizona, who have an interest in 18 to 55, who have an interest in beauty and hair care. And she's having people walk through her door every single day, and she's spending $200 a month. So it's scalable and it's easy is a way of saying it in a short way.
That's cool. I'm going to come back to that because I want to ask you some examples a little later on about how you're running that campaign, if you don't mind sharing, so some people can learn from it. But before we go on and get some more details specifically on that and how that's working, I'd love to hear from our other 2 speakers as well about why do they think Facebook advertising is so exciting right now? Or maybe not. Maybe you think it sucks. I don't know.
I will let Lasse go first.
Thank you.
How about you? Go ahead, Rocco. You jumped in and you go for it.
Okay. So I think Facebook is extremely exciting as a platform, of course. But what we need to keep in mind is what the customer, what the client in this case, is trying to sell. Because not all businesses match what Facebook is trying to offer. To give you an idea, in the slide that you are looking at, you can see 3 types of ads. The first one is a right column ad. The second one is a newsfeed desktop ad, or a tablet in this case. And the third one is a mobile ad. So mobile ads only runs on newsfeed. So let's imagine that your product needs to communicate people a lot of information in order to buy a product. In that case, going for the newsfeed using the Power Editor gives you the opportunity to create much larger ads, much more informative ads. While using the direct interface from Facebook or the right column ads, you that to the customer.
I think we lost you there, Rocco, at the tail end. Last thing we heard was that there's 3 different ads that you were talking about?
We lost him.
Yeah, we lost him. We didn't like that guy anyways. Hey, let's go on to you, Lasse. Tell me why you think Facebook advertising is exciting.
Yeah, well, I think everybody has mentioned a lot of reasons. Like Michael told, it's really easy. I would say one of the things I like is that for new people and new businesses, it's easier to start than Google advertising. And right now, it's more inexpensive. I think in 2 years, it will be much more expensive. And then, like other speakers have said, it has a lot of benefits. For example, cross-device advertising, where you can show your ads on desktop or mobile and tablet. That's really easy and really effective. And also nowadays, it allows us to do some advanced advertising, like, for example, video advertising, and also remarketing, where we will follow people who have visited our website, and we will remind them that, hey, by the way, thanks for visiting. If you have any questions about our products, you can ask, or you can call us here, and so on. So all in all, I think it's excellent platform, and it allows everybody and all kinds of companies to do really effective marketing.
Yeah, all good points. I think, guys, with my Facebook marketing, the one thing I love about it is that you can market to people. You know, where you have with Google AdWords, it's more about buying intent and people's looking to solve a problem. But there's a real kind of art and finesse to picking just the right audience and the right demographics and creating the right creative with the right offer and a landing page that's just, for me, just really sexy and enjoyable and fun. It's kind of what advertising is about. And it's a good user experience when it's one done well, you know, for the actual people who are interested in what it is that you have to sell or offering. When you do it well and you do it right, it's not noise, it's not annoying. It's giving them exactly what they wanted at the right time when they wanted it, which is kind of cool and neat. So, guys, I think we could keep going on about, you know, why Facebook marketing is sexy and why businesses should be doing it. But I want to get into a little bit more of the specifics around, you know, the different ad formats and what you guys are finding is working really well for you. And maybe we could go into some examples. So I know previously before we were talking about there's a lot of different ad formats. There's either the newsfeed format that we were talking about in that screenshot. There's the mobile version of it. There's the right-hand side of it. There's ways to, you know, grow likes to your page. You can promote your posts, and those posts can be links, they can be photos, they can be videos. There's video advertising, there's apps, there's offers. There's a lot of different stuff. But what I want to know from you guys is, which ones are you using? Which ones are you finding are working best for yourself and for your clients? And I'm sure it depends on what it is that they're trying to sell and who they are. But why don't we go through each one of you and find out what your favorite is, or which ones are giving you the best success. So why don't we start with we end say, and then we'll go the other way around.
Okay, perfect. Well, many of the ways you can do advertising are really effective, but I would say one that many people are not using is video marketing. And for example, customer testimonials, so case studies, are right now extremely powerful. So again, if somebody will visit your website, it's really interesting that after half an hour they will see some testimonials on Facebook, and this kind of advertising has a huge ROI and return on investment right now.
Right. That's really cool. You know, one of the things that we did last day one time was we had a client, and so you could sign up for their SaaS product for free for 30 days, but they knew that if they could do a one-on-one demo with them, they would almost close them, you know, 80 or 90% of the time. So if it went over a period of time where they weren't kind of using the tool after 3 or 4 days and we pixeled them, that they signed up but they weren't active, they would download from their CRM that activity in that list, and then we would run ads on Facebook to them where they're just really genuine video ads that said, hey, we know you signed up for this. Did you know that we can do a one-on-one demo with you? Just, you know, click this, click the link at the top of the video there, and go to this thing and schedule a one-on-one demo. And it was really successful. People were doing it in their newsfeed. So there's really interesting things. I like the idea that you were talking about. They went to your website, probably do it with like a review or something else. What are some other interesting ways that you guys are using video right now on Facebook to support the advertising?
Product sales.
Go for it, Matthew. You were up.
You know, well, yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to jump in here on video, and it is exciting times. I mean, we're going to see Facebook, you know, overtake YouTube if they haven't already, in terms of upload and video content online. And it's a very different, it's a different experience, of course. It's a news feed experience. I want to come back to actually something that was said earlier about the different formats of Facebook ads. We really see Facebook as mobile news feed, and I think in this country, I'm sitting here in Canada, now north of 80% of Facebook users in this country are accessing primarily on a mobile device, and that cancels out obviously your right-hand advertising. This is a news feed product, and video increasingly is dominating the news feed, and Facebook has an amazing product. It's an autoplay muted video product. It's challenging from a creative standpoint. You've got, as with most types of advertising, only a few seconds to make an impression. But in terms of gaining views and traction and engagement, that's been, for us, very interesting. And keep in mind, I'm speaking from a global brand perspective. We're representing, brands that are interested in boosting awareness and building, affinity and salience for their products. Yeah. So that video tool's been great, even in order to migrate content that might have appeared on different formats, like television, for instance, migrating that animal to a Facebook news feed and adapting it for the nuances of that news feed have been really interesting for us.
How are you measuring lift for those big brands, Matthew? I mean, do you have a way of doing that that's a standard best practice?
Yeah, actually, measurement is a great topic here. So there are three things we look at, and this is a way to ground your choices when it comes to Facebook advertising. We're really measuring three things: reach, so what kind of impressions, both just raw impressions have we made, and then of course unique users, which you mentioned earlier, Matthew. We're counting actual people here on Facebook, which is a nice ad. So reach. And then engagement, of course. Are we getting interested eyeballs, or are we just getting those views, or rather impressions? So are people liking, commenting, sharing? And then the third thing is conversion. And increasingly conversion, for the direct response marketer, for the inbound marketer, that's a very important nuance. Does video create conversion? Not nearly as well as some of the other styles of Facebook ads. And so typically we're looking for an impression play or an engagement play when we look at video content on Facebook.
Sure. I think, at the end of the day, the ad you run relates to sort of how you should measure it. I mean, you wouldn't measure videos by how many conversions you get. That's not the primary goal. You measure it by engagement and views. Just like, you wouldn't measure, getting website clicks the same way as if your goal was to improve conversions and vice versa. Or for example, is a lot of times people will use a photo, and they're trying to get more clicks to their website. Well, we wouldn't want to use a photo for that. A photo is used for engagement, comments. If you wanted more clicks to your website, you should use a link type promotion that's there. So it's a good point that you say that you got to measure it based right on the ad format that you actually chose. What about, so we talked a lot about video, guys. I don't want to leave some of the other formats out that might be working, and we might circle back to this a little bit more, but are there any other ad formats that you guys are finding are working really well? Why don't we ask, I think, Michael there, what else are you doing? I mean, you said you were doing some advertising there for your sister with her beauty salon. What do you use for that?
Well, before that, I just want to say I'm a newsfeed marketer, right? So I understand the value of creating stories that capture people's attentions, and that happens in the newsfeed. At the same time, we also work with global brands, many of which are in the healthcare vertical, and it's very difficult from a healthcare perspective to have a Facebook page, right? And to be able to generate stories and content about specific treatment areas. And so what we found with some clients is that, and this was actually very eye-opening for us a couple of years ago, which was the marketplace, what used to be called marketplace ads, which are the right real ads. Those drive a significant amount of clicks to a website. So whatever we're syndicating, whether it be a blog post or a video hosted on a branded website or what have you, we found that in many cases, if you think about content syndication, like with Outbrain and things like that, the right rail ads are driving a significant amount more clicks at a lower cost, mainly because of the targeting that you can apply to it. So that's working a lot for some of our healthcare clients that are kind of in this area where they're restricted to, they're kind of under the FDA, microscope. for my sister, and this is something that I do because she's my sister, right? I don't charge her, obviously. I want her to succeed. And for her, it's all about photography and taking really good before and after pictures of her customers and her salon and testimonials. And we simply put really good content, and we'll check back to see the performance of it manually, unfortunately. And we promote content that performs across a certain benchmark. And again, it's a very small budget, but for her, it's very successful. And she's at that point where she's saying, I need to turn this off because like I'm getting too much customers. I'm not able to schedule people in right away. So that seems to be working for her extremely well.
Cool. So that's great. I think we've got a lot of pretty awesome ad formats that are working for people right now. From before and after photos, leveraging video for big brands around Lyft and mirroring it with offline campaigns that might be happening or television campaigns that might be happening. We've heard some use of using it for testimonials. Let's go on a little bit more to the next slide, and maybe we can get Rock, are you back now? Let's see if we can hear you okay now.
Yeah, it should be all good now, I think.
Okay, good. Maybe we could talk a little bit about what some of the best practices are for running different newsfeed ads. So at the end of the day, I think Matthew said this. Facebook is a newsfeed product, particularly since I think you throw out the numbers. 80% of people in Canada are looking at it on their phone right now on a majority amount of time. What was the stat you threw out there?
Yeah, even globally, Facebook now reports, the majority of the Facebook users globally are accessing primarily on a mobile device. In Canada, it's very high adoption. It's north of 80%, possibly growing.
Right. So speaking of that, do you guys, and you can just give it a quick thumbs up or thumbs down, do you see any value in right side ads at all?
It depends.
Not for us. Zero.
Maybe for remarketing.
I've seen customers performing very well on right-hand side ads, but it really depends on the product you're offering.
Do you guys split your ads out? So when you're setting up your campaigns, if you were to do that, do you run separate campaigns, one for newsfeed, versus mobile versus desktop versus right-hand side ads? Do you do that, or you let all the settings just show no matter what, and then run your report after?
We live in a data world. This means that you need to test, and test. If you put everything together, you need to run reports, break things down, and break down after, because different things perform differently. So it's always the best practice to start with the most narrow structure possible and rather allocate the budget to the different sources of traffic than putting everything together, then analyzing things and realizing that you're wasting the budget of your client because you didn't want to break it down.
Sure. Well, so that's a good point. I mean, you got to measure it and track it to improve upon it so you don't waste anything. And I think we all couldn't agree with you more about that. And the great thing is we do live in a digital world where we can do that. But since you guys have so much experience, 15 years, 18 years out there, some of you guys are authors. Let's fast track a few of the listeners out there, and people are going to watch this later. Let's talk about this, and maybe we'll go through a couple of the top ad formats here. Let's just talk about a website click or a website conversion type ad. What are some things that people want to keep in mind when they're creating that ad that universally always helps improve conversions and maybe better relevance score or better click-through rate within the ads? We'll just talk about that one ad format first. Maybe we'll start with who hasn't spoken for a while. I think Lasse, you haven't spoken in a little bit. What should you do on a website click?
Yeah, well, a few things. Like number one, obviously, is the image that you are using. The image should be interesting and eye-catching and different. And also, at the same time, what we have noticed is that if you use a question, it's really interesting. And in this question, if you start with the question and you mention your target audience in that question, it's really interesting. So, for example, if you are selling something for tennis players, you can say, hey, tennis player, are you having these 7 challenges that all the players are having? So then people see that and they're like, wow, that's really interesting. So I would make it really relevant and use questions.
That was good. So the two I heard there was image is important. You found that asking questions work well. Matthew, what are a couple things that you find work well in website click ads that are universal across the board?
Yeah, well, for us, something that's new and we've tested quite a bit is the new call to action button that you can add to a link post or a link ad. And we've seen a really good lift actually in using that button. There's a small amount of options for text that can be placed on that button, but it does jump out. And again, back to newsfeed or mobile newsfeed, that button's nice and big for your thumb. It's a great quick way to know that this is a unit that's driving you off of Facebook. And let's keep in mind, when you're talking about social and click through or click off, a lot of users are using Facebook obviously daily. They're not always interested in leaving Facebook. It's a hard thing sometimes to do to get someone to move off of the platform and onto something else. They particularly want to stay there and digest more content. We find this is even more true with platforms like LinkedIn. But buttons like that call to action button have been, for us, meaningful. I agree with Lassie's point about the image as well. Probably the most important thing. And we love the fact that you can customize that image. And in fact, the image doesn't even need to correlate to the content you're about to click through to.
It just needs to grab your attention. Is that right?
That can be very effective, yes.
That's cool. So we got questions, images. Again, that was really neat. We got that new download button that's available to add there. The recommendation is that you should use it. Michael, do you have a couple things that you want to add to, be able to fast track someone to better success with a newsfeed click ad?
I would just say testing. There's a lot of studies out there that show you what users in Facebook are more likely to click on, and some of the studies pull from data on search and click-throughs on like content syndication platforms. So the language and vernacular of the words that you're using seem to be driving a lot of clicks. I remember a few months back, Facebook. I don't know if you recall some of those articles from like Upworthy, where it would be something along the lines of, "Man finds a book, you'll never guess what it says inside." And so that seemed to be a trend for a while. The problem was the payoff wasn't great, right? The experience wasn't great, and Facebook got smart and said, "Okay, look, it's great to have very compelling headlines, but the content itself must pay off." And Facebook knows if it does or it doesn't. So I would say testing and using and understanding the language and vernacular of your audience is something that is very important, and then you can optimize based on click-throughs.
Right. So what I'm hearing from you is, and this is true. So I think they call it like clickbait, those types of posts. But how does, you mentioned that Facebook knows whether you're doing clickbait or whether it actually adds value to the user. Do you have any idea on how they're measuring that?
That's a good question. I think that there's a cookie obviously, so they can check bounce rate for once they click off somewhere. I would assume. I'm not sure about that 100%. But I think a lot of it has to do with from what I understand and from a friend of mine at Facebook, a lot of these advertisers are spending a lot of time complaining about what other advertisers are doing in the newsfeed. And so that is, it's more of a qualitative perspective, right? It's not like a data point. It's this idea that, and I hear it all the time, where people are, there's certain celebrities on Facebook who are republishing other people's content and driving mass amounts of views and causing, complaints against the particular individuals. And I heard the same thing was happening to different publishers and media sites who were doing the same thing. And so there was this kind of feedback loop to Facebook saying, "Hey, this isn't fair. We need to level the playing field."
I want to build on actual negative Facebook going. It's kind of like negative SEO. They're saying there's negative Facebook.
Yep, there is.
Interesting.
Well, actually, if I could jump in, Matthew, that's something that Facebook has built into the platform, and we talk about the data set that this company is sitting on. It's probably unparalleled. Users, of course, can give feedback on any piece of content. Many users aren't aware of that, but we call that negative feedback, and that is monitored. I know we're going to talk about relevance in a second, but that's what Michael's hinting at here, is the relevance of content and that score that has appeared suddenly in the advertising platform. When you get negative feedback, that's going to hurt you as an advertiser. So that clickbait was never a good idea to begin with, and Facebook happily has cut back on that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. They can measure it by the engagement. Even when you're in your mobile phone, they don't send you to the site. They iframe it in. They can tell how long you've been on it, or whether you're what we call pogo sticking, I guess, in the SEO world, and they can as well, tell if you've actually, read it and how long you stayed on it, and also the other engagement metrics as well, I guess, which is, the traditional commenting and liking and sharing, and then there's the negative ones that if they actually click in the right-hand corner of that ad, they can say they don't want those anymore. You definitely don't want to have too many of those coming up on your ad. That can probably lower that relevance score pretty quickly.
And increase your cost.
And increase your costs. And there's great articles already published on there that they're doing a very similar thing to what AdWords does, where the relevance score does affect your cost. That if you have a high relevance score, you're going to pay a lot less per click than you will if you have a low relevance score. So it's really important that you do, match your ads very specifically to the right audience, which kind of brings us to the next point that I want to talk a little bit about, which a lot of people may not understand how audiences work and custom audiences work. And how you create audiences in Facebook. And I don't want to say that a creative is more important than an audience. The magic, I think, happens when you bring them both together. But maybe we could get Matthew. You could maybe speak real quick about what is an audience, how do you build an audience, what are the options there, so for people out there who don't know what that means,
Sure. I mean, this is an amazing tool that we use quite frequently. And I want to build into lookalike audiences, which is another layer here. But custom audiences allow you really, as a marketer, to build a list around value, a value proposition. So, in other words, what's valuable to your company? Is it actions? Is it newsletter downloads, etc.? People who have taken those actions can now be corralled, whether they're customers, people who've attended an event, people who buy your competitors' products. And there's lots of ways to identify those individuals, including obviously the obvious one like email address or UDID device identifiers, and now build an audience and corral those individuals, match them to people who are Facebook users, and target them directly. That's step one. Just to jump ahead, there's another layer here called a lookalike audience, which allows you to broaden from a custom audience out to individuals who may look a lot like or be a lot like those people whom you've already identified. Both of those tools are fantastic and have made a big change in terms of impact to results.
Yeah, and yeah, it's really, really cool. Maybe we could get Rocco to talk about as well outside of custom audiences, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we create them, get them in a minute. But what are some other settings that you can do to refine the audience that you're trying to target on Facebook? Can you talk a little bit about interests and age and gender and demographics?
Sure. So first of all, I would like to add a point to the custom audiences aspect of things, because something that we need to keep in mind is that many people consider custom audiences as remarketing or advertising to an email list. But you can actually get creative with those, because what I tell my clients is get the email of people that bought in your e-commerce store, for example, accessories, because they already bought your product. So if you use this list because you know they bought your product, they will buy the accessories from you. So you can actually use custom audiences to upsell to your existing customers. And we all know it's much easier to sell from somebody that already bought from you. On top of that, you mentioned there are hundreds and hundreds of ways to kind of target people on Facebook. What I find very useful is something that mostly is available in the United States, unfortunately, because you guys have got much more data over there. But for example, targeting by income or net worth, it could be very powerful for lifestyle brands where maybe their price point is higher. Or another very good thing is that if you're targeting moms on Facebook, you can target parents with children within a given age range. So that's, again, very powerful. So it's not only about ages and interests, but you can get very deep into selecting specific behaviors or specific lifestyles that allow you to sell the product in an easier way. For example, you can advertise to expats, so people that don't live in their own country. So maybe you can advertise local products to these people because they're missing those. So there are a lot of ways to target people. Unfortunately, you kind of need to sit there and go look at them one after the other because you cannot know them all by heart. But I think that you can also combine those behavior, interests, lifestyles with custom audiences or look-alike to get an even more powerful way to target your audience on Facebook.
Yeah, those are some great tips. I love the one that you just gave about the upselling. I think a lot of people don't understand that, the custom audience, that if someone bought a laptop on your website and you knew that, well, then you could then upsell them with the laptop bag or the laptop stand or the accessories.
Exactly.
Very, very smart.
Imagine if you're a car dealer, for example. People are buying cars from you, and an accessory for the car costs a lot, and maybe you don't know it exists. So you can technically do a video ad to your people, to the people that bought from you, showing the accessory. It could be very powerful.
very, very cool. Lasse, maybe you could talk a little bit about it. I don't think we've heard you speak in a little while about how does one, get these different custom audiences. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the pixel process as well as, the upload via the UIDs or emails or phone numbers a little bit and explain that to people, how that works.
Right. Well, most of all of the companies, they should focus on this custom audiences and understand that this is the easiest way to start, I would say. And number one, you should pixel all of your websites, meaning that you put a code from Facebook so that Facebook knows and they can track who will visit different sites you have. And the nice thing here is that you can also show certain ads for people who are visiting your main site and then others for, let's say, people who have abandoned your shopping cart, which is really interesting as well. And then another thing that I think Matthew was telling is this thing of simply uploading an Excel file where you have emails, names and emails of people who have bought something from you. And let's say for small and medium-sized companies, this would be the number one action. You simply do an Excel of everything, all of your customers, and then you upload that to Facebook. And then you simply ask them, hey, how are you doing? Do you have any questions? And is there anything we can help you with, and so on. So at the end of the day, all of these things are really easy, and I would say that there's a big lack of knowledge when it comes to companies, and many of them don't understand how powerful this really is, and it's quite easy to set up and start.
Right. Cool. Michael, maybe you could talk a little bit. I think sometimes people have some issues with understanding, privacy issues around custom audiences and uploading from your CRM about, email addresses. How does that all work, and is there any issues around that?
Well, absolutely. And I think also, to be honest, I know this is a session on Facebook custom audiences. I prefer Twitter custom audiences.
Okay. Great.
Maybe that's a different call. Maybe next time. And I have a reason behind that. But I think with Facebook,
why don't you just quickly share with us why you think Twitter custom audiences are better than Facebook custom audiences?
Well, I think part of it is because of my background. I'm a recovering direct marketer. So many years ago, I ran a search program for HP, and I was spending $12, $15 million a year trying to get people to my website. And so, since over the course of my career, I've been very much focused on relationship building in a way that's scalable, and it's a lot more scalable to target personalized content on Twitter than it is on Facebook.
Okay.
That's just my personal opinion. I have a ton of examples, but maybe that's another day.
Okay.
I think from a security
We'll take your word for it.
Say again?
We'll take your word for it.
Right. I think from a security standpoint, especially when you talk about this context, this thing called social CRM, right? Being able to tie a customer record to their social profiles and email addresses, and it kind of being one ecosystem. Now, a lot of times, all of this data is open, right? I mean, people are not afraid to give their email address publicly. They're very open on LinkedIn, telling you where they work and what they do and how long they've been there. On Twitter, even more personal, right? So you have all these data points that are available to marketers, and you can use those as inputs for what you're doing on Facebook, right? In terms of segmentation and audience interest and lifestyles. And I think just from a security standpoint, privacy and security standpoint, I think that's one reason why Facebook won't give you usernames, right? They give you IDs, right? So you either have IDs that you can target, or you can target email addresses. Assuming, however, if their business email address is the same email address that they're using on Facebook. And I'm not sure what you've seen on the call, but I've seen that. Sorry about that. But I've seen about 20 to 30% connection between somebody who uses their Facebook for business and then what they're also subscribing for from an email database or newsletter. So there's always a pretty significant percent drop off in connecting that customer record. So just from a privacy standpoint, I think it's important that large brands especially are very careful. And there are companies like Rapleaf, for example, many years ago, who were scraping email addresses from different social accounts, and they got in trouble by the FTC. And so they've kind of had to alter the way that they're pulling data. So what's right and what's wrong, I don't really know.
Did they get in trouble because they were emailing them directly, or because they were scraping them and then using them as a custom audience?
Well, no, they were scraping them and then selling them to advertisers.
Got it. Okay.
So that was
they went all the way.
Right. So I don't know the law. But what I do know is that for large companies who are building custom audiences and gathering data from different sources, whether it be DataSift or Twitter directly or Facebook, you just need to be careful and make sure that everything is being run through the legal department to cover their butts in the future.
Sure. I think that's a good point. The point the point that we want to drill home there is we are not lawyers. And if you have a big brand or even a small company, you're gonna want to be careful before you do certain things and make sure that you're legally okay with doing it. But there are some interesting things you can do, even the sense of as an example, a lot of databases with the new Castle laws that are in Canada, and Matthew would know about this a bit, it makes it more difficult to do email marketing. But one of the things you can do is you can still buy a database from a database broker, and you can upload that to Facebook and market to that list, because it's not one-to-one, it's one-to-many, so it should be okay. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but we've had some success with that before, that if you have a vertical, like if you market directly to, let's say, HR professionals, an example, you can buy a list of all HR professionals, upload it there instead of emailing them directly, and run a product that makes sense to them that they would be interested in the news feed. So there's definitely some interesting things that you can do with custom audiences, even if you don't personally own the list around your CRM and ways to get it up.
Something that we didn't discuss, which is I think very important, is the use of Google Analytics into all of that. Because something that I strongly recommend my clients is going to Google Analytics, look at the affinity reports, look at all the reports describing how your customers behave, and then target those on Facebook. Or use the audience insights on Facebook to look at what people like, or what people are interested in, and what they do. All of that allows you to find even more ways to target people, and maybe combining lookalikes with what you find in analytics and audience insights to kind of get to a very targeted list that might generate good results for your business.
Yeah, very, very true. So guys, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking a little bit about tools, and I also wanted to talk a little bit about why ads might get declined. What are the typical reasons around that? I think let's go with that one first. About we did talk about relevance score. We talked about a lot of the different ad formats and custom audiences and pixels and things. But why are some ads getting denied? Like from your experience, what have you found? Why do they get rejected? Matthew, you want to go with this one?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's an obvious, requirement. All of us are familiar with what they call their 20% text overlay rule. I mean, that's a common one. And why is that in place to begin with? I think that's an interesting thought. I think it was Rocco mentioned earlier, this idea of testing and testing and testing. We really believe in that. What content is resonating, and it's typically Facebook's coming from this place where it's very photo-driven, very people-driven content tends to rule the day. In fact, there was an anecdotal stat about the best photo image on Facebook is one that actually contains a human face, and there's nothing more likely to get your thumb to stop scrolling than another human's face. But aside from that type of content, thinking about what's worked from an engagement standpoint, typically is what we look for and how that translates to an ad product. So we test content first, maybe even organically on Facebook, and then use our best performing organic content and translate that to ad content. But you cannot have more than 20% of your image covered in text or logos, or even product labels, as we've unfortunately discovered. That's a big one.
Interesting. And just so you guys know, sometimes too with the text, you can get away with like some stuff that doesn't look like text. Like for example, a watermark of your brand, they usually won't count that. But it is something that will be caught. In fact, even when you upload it to the Facebook editor, it almost automatically can detect it. If you see that coming up, it's for sure going to get a manual audit
Yeah.
on the image going through. But it's interesting to test those things out. So what
I have
else?
a theory about that, though.
Yes. Okay, let's hear your theory.
In my opinion, the reason why the 20% rule is because with 20% of text, you not really write a lot on the image. And probably if you wouldn't have that, some people might take advantage of it and write things that are maybe not completely related to an ad, but because they want to have some content go viral, and maybe the automatic review from Facebook cannot process as much text. So the only way to contain it is to put a limit to the word count in the image.
I think part of it also is that, I mean, you look at an image with a ton of text on it, it's not very fashionable to look at. I mean, it's ugly, right? So they're maintaining some level of consistency in the news. I would also say that, you know, the way that I look at Facebook ads, you know, when you look at the actual ad itself or the post, the content, you know, you have the you know, the 1 or 2 at maximum 3 lines of text. That is what I would call a lead up, right? You are leading up. You are about to say something. The image itself is the payoff, right? Or the link or whatever it is you're doing. So marketers need to think about the way that they're, you know, the way that they're not only gaining the attention of consumers, right? Because they only have a few seconds during the scrolling process. But then also, like, again, the logo, the watermark, that is kind of a best practice, right? Because the more that it's shared, the more impressions, the larger brand awareness. But there's kind of an art to content on Facebook, right? It's very much like a billboard in a way. And when you're thinking about the engagement and kind of the reach perspective, not the videos and whatnot, but that's my perspective on that 20% rule. It's got to be clean, right? It's got to tell a story, and you can only do it with very few text, so that makes it challenging for marketers.
Have you guys noticed other reasons why ads get denied? Like, I've noticed sometimes that if it has a negative connotation, and I mean, you go to Facebook guidelines and they show all kinds of examples of why ads might be rejected, but I've seen some really interesting ones that even just, you know, talking about, let's say for a chiropractor and back pain in a negative way, instead of like, do you have back pain, and showing a guy with back pain, it'll get rejected, versus, you know, something general along the lines of, you know, 10 reasons why people have back pain, and then it's like a guy who's not in pain, but you see him being active, and that'll get approved. You guys ever notice stuff like that getting rejected?
The body of people. If you don't put the face and they put the body, they can disapprove it because you're using an idealistic body shape.
Right. So that's some really good points that we learned. It sounds like really at the end of the day, guys, the image and the 20% rules, the main reason why ads get rejected. There are many other reasons why that it could be. But we'll table that for now. What I want to get into is talking about the guys about what tools they're using to manage their Facebook ads. I know there's a lot of great tools out there. And then before we get into those tools, we want to ask the viewers out there, if you have any questions, to start putting them in the chat box, or to be sending them out via Twitter with the hashtag #MarketingFanatics. And we'll get them, because after we talk about tools, we're going to go to the experts and ask them your questions. So please feel free to add those in. In the meantime, let's talk about tools. We'll just go down the line, and I don't think we've heard anything from Lasse in a little while. What are you using for Facebook ads management?
Well, before answering that, I think one thing which everybody needs to understand is that nowadays the attention span is getting shorter all the time. And what happens is people are all the time on mobile, and there's more mobile messaging coming up and happening all the time. And this means that when you're doing Facebook advertising, whatever you are offering should be like extremely good content. In other words, if you're just saying that, hey, go here and buy my stuff, it doesn't work. But if you really try to create great content and then you use Facebook advertising to send people there, I think you will have a great results. And one thing we recommend is always try to do like checklist. People love to go somewhere to download checklist or something like that. So I just wanted to share that because it's so powerful, and to understand that people will watch your ad maybe like 1 second or 2 seconds. But when it comes to tools, well, I use Kuwaya, and it's, you know, when you are managing many different things, and it's kind of like Power Editor but a bit better. but at the same time, it's quite advanced. So I would not recommend that to somebody who is just getting started.
Right. How about yourself there, Michael? What tools are you using to manage Facebook ads?
That's a great question. So we use, I mean, some clients were using Marin software. I mean, sometimes it just depends on what the client uses that we have to adopt and use, or many times they're asking for recommendations. There's a tool that I actually really am fond of. It's a company called Social Flow, and the reason why I like their platform is what you do is you upload a set of ads in on the platform, and it only publishes the content on Facebook, and it also does it on Twitter when your audience is actually logged in and paying attention. Okay. And you can actually see a little diagram that says, okay, now you have, your audience is growing. Now is the best time to publish. So it'll dynamically publish content, and then you can add benchmarks to say once a piece of content on my page reaches a certain engagement level. So let's just say 200 engagements, likes, comments, shares. You can automatically turn it on and boost it. So it has these algorithms built in, and it's fairly inexpensive. It's not, it's a couple $1,000s a month. Not ideal for a small business perhaps, but it's a good tool, and the results are fantastic.
So it sounds like it's a two-in-one tool. So not only is it an ad management tool, it's also a community and page management tool for many social platforms, including Facebook and Twitter, and maybe more. Cool.
Yep.
Cool. Matthew, what are you using? What are your preferred Facebook management tools?
This might surprise you, but we've been pretty impressed with the native capabilities of Facebook and how it's evolved really over the past few years. I mean, we wrote Power Editor and their Ads Manager, and now we're using Business Manager pretty regularly, and it's because some of our clients are involved in the back end, and we need a system that they're comfortable with, and working natively has been very successful for us. And we often, Rocco made the allusion to Google Analytics. That's been a very important tool for looking at getting another vantage point on what's happening on Facebook, including whether we need to pixel content or use UTMs. We haven't mentioned UTM URL tracking, and for us that's an important tool as well. And there we use Google Analytics for our to add UTM coding.
Yep, totally, and absolutely. We use the native advertising platform a lot too, but there's a couple other platforms that are decent too. AdExpresso and AdParlor I found specifically around Facebook ads have been useful too in the past. Rocco, did we get everybody? Did everybody mention their preferred tools, if they have any, or none in the case of Matthew?
I think we mentioned them all. I mean, I was building on the same point of analytics and the native Facebook interface. Yeah. Something that many people ignore, but that actually is very cool, is that on Facebook, many people create ads through the normal interface, where you click create an ad, fill in the stuff, and move on with it. But if you actually use the Power Editor, you get much larger text capabilities for your newsfeed. So that's very important, because you can have bigger headers, bigger text, and maybe a see more button if you want to give a more description, which is not possible in the live interface.
Sure. Why don't we talk a little bit real quick about the difference between sort of that and the editor and the normal native Facebook manager. So you mentioned that the difference. What were some of the differences you mentioned again? You were saying that there's a few special features that you can only get in the editor, and you can only work on that with Chrome, right?
We can have bigger text in the newsfeed.
Yeah.
So more text, basically. And on top of that, of course, you can copy and paste campaigns very fast and change the settings in no time. Otherwise, you need to recreate everything all the time, which might be a bit of a pain. And on top of that, most of the times when you use the Power Editor, you kind of can easily combine your audiences. It's much more customer friendly than to look at the live interface, because it takes time to load, The editor is right there. It doesn't need to load, so it's good.
Right. Cool. Thanks. Well, listen, let's get to a couple of questions that we got out there. There weren't, there were a few here. So here's one question here. It says here, okay, so one question was, how do you market yourself on Facebook? And I wish they said what industry, because we'd have been more specific, but they're asking about having a boring business. I guess a business that's not sexy. Their words were not interesting. So my question is, why are you involved in that business if it's boring? But
They make money.
Yeah, I personally, I'll let you guys take it away. I think there's no such thing as not being able to market a business that's boring. I mean, there's always an angle to make it sexy. But do you guys have any examples of some, not so sexy businesses that have been successful with Facebook advertising? And why don't we go down the line? Matthew, do you have an example?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. I mean, we often have clients who compare themselves to other clients that they're aware of, and they always think that the grass is greener. Everyone thinks the grass is greener. And we are in a storytelling age, we like to say, and everyone has a story to tell. Every brand has a story to tell. Every product has a story to tell. It's our job now to dig into that content and figure out what is meaningful ultimately to our customers. And maybe it's not our own dare I say, native content that's interesting, but our ability to find and curate content and have a perspective or a voice, all of those things are meaningful and can lead to great, storytelling on social media. So there's no limit here to what is possible. I agree with you. I mean, there's nothing uninteresting anymore.
Yeah.
There's an audience for everything.
There is an audience for everything. You'd be surprised to find what people are interested in, and that's what's so neat. And that's what's so neat about Facebook is you can find those really specialized niches and audiences and market specifically to them. And in fact, your product, you can actually sell your product in different ways. On Facebook. I mean, the needs. Let's say you sell makeup, for example. You could literally package it differently because a 25-year-old, female has different needs for makeup than the 35-year-old stay-at-home mom versus the 45-year-old business professional woman who's looking for makeup. And they all have a different story, but you could still sell the same product where they're all using the same makeup product. And I just think that's really neat. And the fact that you can do it so easily on Facebook is really neat.
Yeah.
I had a really good question that came in here too, guys, before we go, which was, I thought this was really great. And it asked what blogs, besides obviously yourselves, should people follow if they want to learn more about social media marketing and particularly Facebook advertising? What blogs do you guys read?
If I may jump in, I can mention three, which are also three I write for, but I happen to write for them because I like them, which are the Social Media Examiner, if you want to find out more about Twitter. It could be also the Search Engine Journal. It's much more focused on pay-per-click, but it also has a lot of articles for social media. Then I also write for entrepreneur.com, and there is a very growing interest for social media on Entrepreneur. Every time there is an article about social media, it gets much more shared than an article about entrepreneurship. It's very interesting. And the fourth one is the growing blog, which is SEM Rush. They are growing a lot, and therefore you can find very interesting content. Not much about social media, but all that section is growing in there.
Their webinars have been really good lately, I've noticed. So
Yeah, very good stuff.
Good tip. What about you, Michael? What do you recommend people read blog-wise or to get some more information?
Yeah, I would say I would echo and say Social Media Examiner is definitely a good blog. It's very much focused on SMBs and small business, and it's good because they don't just talk about. I mean, they talk about everything. Best practices for Twitter, Facebook, blog writing, things like that. And they're really consistent at the type of content that they're putting out from a frequency standpoint. So, right. Social Media Examiner, I would say, is definitely would be top on my list.
Right.
I'll add Mr. John Loomer, who we believe is a really great, hardworking individual. He likes to test almost everything Facebook has to offer. We used to say if you're not reading John Loomer, you're not marketing on Facebook. So there's a quick one for everyone who hasn't heard of him.
Yeah, he's probably one of my favorites and the ones I follow closely around the ads management anyways. Anybody else have any other favorites that they should follow?
Yeah, I would just say John Loomer is amazing, and I would just simply follow a hashtag on Twitter like Facebook ads. For example, if you follow that hashtag, you will learn a lot and you will get a lot of new interesting insights that probably some big sites are not reporting.
Great. Well, listen, before we wrap up here, guys, and say thank you very much for being a part of this webinar today, I think you dropped some great tips that people are going to enjoy and people who are going to watch the recording are going to enjoy. But before you go, we're going to post a link. I believe the guys are going to post a link in the webinar format that you can go to to fill out a survey. And we want you to click on this link. And remember, if you fill out this survey, it'll take you probably less than 30 seconds to do. You'll be entered to be able to be eligible to win an Amazon gift card for $50. And we just want to know: are you enjoying it? Are you not enjoying it? How do you think we can improve? What other topics you want to hear about, and we'll move forward from there. Gentlemen, I just want to let you guys know, I want to thank you very, very much for coming. I want everyone as well to know that we have another webinar coming up next month, May 28th, and I believe it's going to be about email marketing or marketing automation. And we hope that you guys can join. Feel free to go over and register for the webinar series at poweredbysearch.com/2015-webinar-series. And we do a monthly webinar every single month. Gentlemen, you guys were fantastic. A big round of applause. Thank you very much. And we guys.
Thank you for having us here.
Brilliant day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, Matthew.